This is your marriage strategy of the week. What's this week's strategy, Victoria?
So, this week's strategy is about getting intentional about your weekly household rhythms. And I've noticed with a lot of couples, and I personally for us as well, it's a little bit easier to do when you're, just you and your spouse. There's no kids involved. However, once you have like a business that you're building, you get a new job, you get a new promotion, somebody is going to school, or you start having kids. I mean, sometimes we assume that we can just keep moving ahead without addressing some of this stuff and not actually communicate what we need in this specific season. So we're kind of giving you guys like 4 pointers to address when it comes to how to establish those healthy household rhythms. And one of the first one is having the talk about it, just sitting down and saying, hey, what do you have on your plate?
But I think the key word is intentional.
Yeah, you can't just do it in passing and say, well, you never help me do this and you never do this. Even though you express yourself, I don't know if that's going to be effective strategy, and your spouse is supposed to automatically get it and say, oh, well, they're complained about this, so maybe I need to step up. They may do it, but it's probably going to be for a very short period of time. I think intentional conversation, meaning that you sit down and you agree to it, which means that you can actually keep each other accountable because of the intentional conversation.
And you can do that as the seasons shift. Like, okay, it's fall now. Our kids are in school. The way that our household rhythms run now versus when it was the summertime, it's completely different. We need to get back on the same page as to who's doing what does our weekly routine look like, what have we said yes to, what are we committed to, and where do we need to say no in order to get our lives on the same page. Even Victoria and I this week sort of hit that roadblock as well. It's been about a month since our kids have been in school, and out of frustration in passing, because we didn't intentionally do it, we had a whole situation about, the household duties and chores and laundry and that sort of thing. And it seems simple, but it does weigh heavily on you as a couple if you don't intentionally address it. See, we made the mistake of allowing it to fester before we talked about it. Instead, we should have been intentional. And we're going to do that moving forward, and we encourage you to do the same. But that moves into point 2, which is to understand what is on each other's plate. Like, in that conversation, talk about, this is what I've got going on at the house and away from the house. So you know that you're not in it alone. Or you can say, wow, my spouse is picking up a lot more than me when it comes to the weekly household responsibilities, and I need to step up, right?
And also sometimes you may not know what your spouse is doing if you are not really like deep into their job and all the little things that they may do that you just kind of like, well, I don't know what they do. So you just, because you don't have those intentional conversations and are asking them, what do you do? Or what is currently on your plate? You actually sometimes don't know yourself what they may be actually going through and the pressure that they may be having.
Which is actually number 3. Let's talk about those household responsibilities. So if you're the one doing the laundry, what does that look like for you? Explain that to your spouse, that we're going to do that. I'm going to do laundry on Monday and Wednesday, and I'm going to do things this way, so that we know how to support you or step in if we need to. And then also just to be more, what is the word I'm looking for? Considerate of your spouse on those certain days when you know that they're having more on their plate. And number 4 is understanding what season that you're in. Is the current allocation of responsibilities in your home because of, the season? Maybe one of you's in school. Maybe, is it temporary? And then really say to yourself, when does this end? When do we need to address this conversation again? I know that was a drive-by, but just to recap just a little bit. Number 1, intentional conversations. Number 2, what's on your plate already?
Yeah.
Number 3, explain, if you are responsible for a certain duty in the house, how you're going to go about executing that every single week. And number 4, what season are you in? Is this temporary, or can this work long term? And ultimately, you got to revisit this often and again, maybe every season.
Yeah, so that's the strategy of the week. We hope that you guys are implementing that. And I know that that will remove a lot of frustration that a lot of you guys are dealing with, especially if you are in a really work intensive season.
Yes. And for all your marriage strategies, make sure you're following us on social media at More Most Forever on Instagram, on Facebook. We put out quotes, reels, and more on this topic over there at More Most Forever.